These are some thoughts on the Mungoshi poem Before the Sun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that you've read the poem and that you've had some thoughts about it and maybe made some annotations yourself or in class. And then this is picking up some questions, some more detailed thoughts, some annotation. I'll talk my way through the annotations already on the poem and put in anything additional as we go through. Now, I would always start by looking at the poem's title. And really, the title is the first thing the poet wants you to understand about the poem. And it's setting up expectations. And sometimes those expectations are completely legitimate. They are completely kind of matching what happens in the poem. Sometimes they are subverted or they are added to. So if you subvert something, it means you turn it on its head, you challenge it. Okay? So here we've got the idea of before the sun. And we can get a number of layers out of this. It could mean literally before the sun rises. So first thing in the morning, and we know from reading the poem that this is about a boy who is lighting a fire, chopping wood, lighting a fire, cooking some maize at sunrise. So we take that literal sense and say, okay, we've got this idea before the sun rises. Well, what are the implications of that? Do we have any ideas of kind of darkness and coldness and then growing warmth? Okay. We can think, before the sun, almost prehistory, pre-time, a basic kind of, in the beginning sort of interpretation of it. In one way, going back to basics, in another way, kind of, looking at the joys of nature and creation and the wonder of all of that. And we can also imbue it with a religious meaning, before the sun in terms of, before God, before, as in, you are carrying out something at the altar of something else. So in front of the sun is witnessing all of that. And just because I always want to flag up any ideas that we've had as we're kind of going through, I'm going to put this kind of question mark, sun. We've got this kind of possible homophonic connection. And I'm just going to put that there to see if it comes back or if we do anything with it. And if you're covering kind of unseen poetry, it's always good to flag things up as you annotate, even with a question mark if you're not certain about them, just so you've had that thought and you don't lose it as you're going through the poem. Now, our first quatrain, we've got our first 4 lines: intense blue morning promising early heat, and later in the afternoon, heavy rain, right? So again, factually, we've got this beautiful morning. Now, we know that Mungoshi is a Zimbabwean poet, and this is the sort of striking sky, the heat maybe of his childhood in Zimbabwe. But we've also got these potential more metaphorical, more symbolic meanings to it. We know from later on that, the speaker is 14, or there is this memory of being 14 at this point. And so we can say, is this pathetic fallacy? Is the weather and the setting mimicking his emotions? This idea of potential, right? Is there going to be kind of potential to disappointment or potential to aging? Is this actually suggesting this kind of bright start to the day as a bright start in life? And then later, things start to fade, things start to kind of move down a little bit. I've suggested that, we can say this is maybe this heavy rain is slightly pathetic. Bathos is that sense of anticlimax. And we've got it by itself on this line, kind of bringing down that kind of tone or mood. We start to realize that this is a free verse poem, so there is no discernible regular meter, there is no discernible rhyme scheme. And so we're looking at free verse, and because we've looked at the story of the poem, of what this boy is doing, we're maybe thinking that the free verse could suggest freedom and innocence of childhood, that idea of sort of liberation and possibility. Okay? We then kind of move to this idea of chopping the wood. And I'd pick up on the kind of largely monosyllabic nature of this, the simplicity. A lot of this poem has got deceptively simple language in it, which is kind of leading you into much more complex and sophisticated ideas. But here the bright chips fly from the sharp axe for some distance through the air, arc, and eternities later. And I'm reading that like that deliberately because of this kind of pattern that I've picked up. That one word on the line by itself is almost like that turning point of the arc. You can see the wiggly line next to my arc. I've kind of labeled zenith and nadir, high point of a wave, low point of a wave. So we're going to say that arc is the kind of zenith of that action, and then it kind of turns around. So linguistically and structurally, it's kind of that metaphor is sort of creating that turning point in the stanza. Okay, you've got the freedom and the possibility of fly. You've got the kind of flying from the sharp axe, this idea of, almost, I suppose, invincibility, that idea of kind of escape and dynamism and kind of, moving from anything that's going to threaten you. But our lines get longer to represent that flight, and then eternities later. And the kind of hyperbole in that metaphor is kind of showing the perception of the 14-year-old. Everything that he's doing is imbued with significance, has got this kind of great importance and meaning. And time seems to slow down as it settles down to showers on the dewy grass. I'd pick up maybe our plosives here, the bright chips, sharp distance, moving to the sibilance of the settling in showers grass, as things kind of settle. So we've got that harsh chip, 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 kind of bang, bang, bang of the axe, and then moving to the sibilance as they kind of glide down. And it is a kind of idyllic, natural picture. And idyll is a, beautiful, natural place. This is idyllic. The grass is dewy. There's everything that you need for a perfect day here, really. Then we move to very short lines in this quatrain. It is a big log, but when you were 14, big logs are what you want. So again, that kind of sense of assertion. If you're asserting something, you're saying it really confidently. And it's a simplistic assertion. It's got that straightforward confidence of the young man on the cusp, C-U-S-P, the edge of adulthood. Again, it's largely monosyllabic. I've said largely because the 14 messes up the entirely monosyllabic argument. And literally, you want the big pieces. You want to show what you can do, because metaphorically and symbolically, it's symbolizing your strength, the challenge, and the ability. You are testing your prowess, your strength there. They're what you want, as well as obviously, being that resource. You can deal with this, you can provide that, you can fend for yourself. He's going to cook his maize over this fire as the sun comes up. We're looking maybe again at the end stop there on that line, that kind of sense of confidence again. Then we move from this very practical, and again, maybe picking up on those plosives there, we're still chopping. We're moving from this practical kind of straightforward bang, bang, bang action to then going into a more delicate and sensory appreciation of what's going on. We're back into the world of showers and dewy grass, because the wood gives off a sweet nose cleansing odor, which, unlike sawdust, doesn't make one sneeze. So we've got that kind of appreciation, the enjoyment of the smell. The parenthesis, the brackets there, give it a kind of colloquial or confidential style. We're being spoken to directly by the speaker. We know sawdust gets up your nose. And it is kind of showing somebody who is in tune with their environment on a number of levels. Okay, so we've got the idea that, yes, they're noticing everything around them. They're noticing the beauty of the dew. They're noticing the smell of the wood. They're aware of, the potential of it. And we stay with that kind of idea of the more spiritual potential, because the tone of the poem becomes less certain, more speculative, more wondering and contemplating. Because using the wood, we're then burning the wood, and the thin spiral of smoke, which later straightens and flutes out to the distant sky. The kind of lexis has become a lot more poetic, spiral and flute. These are kind of twisty, beautiful, musical kind of terms spreading out. The distance of the sky, that idea of, things being more spiritual, more artistic, more beautiful, gets him thinking about the idea of a signal of some sort or a sacrificial prayer. So the mood becomes less certain. We get this kind of some awe as he's contemplating. And the idea of, what you're asking for, what you're praying for, not being alone here. And we know he's not alone because of the way he's going to look at the sun, but also that kind of spiritual element of not being alone in prayer. And the enjambment here, we can talk about mimicking that idea of the smoke spiraling away, kind of watching what he's doing impact the horizon, impact on the sky. You can contrast it with the kind of certainty earlier of the big logs, maybe comment on the fact that this is a boy finding his place in the world. The physical is one thing, the spiritual is something very different. And we've got the wood hisses, the sparks fly. We've got two end stops, making that fairly short and sharp. Again, largely simplistic, largely monosyllabic. The onomatopoeia of hisses. I'm always going to check in with hisses and snakes, and is there any kind of Christianity temptation in there? But I'm always going to be brave enough to say no, right? It might be that you think there is. And if you think there is, please put a comment below, because I would be really interested in that. But let's see, we've got that kind of almost that I think the natural world is interacting with him. It's kind of becoming more dynamic meaning kind of, active and having that movement, right? So he can hear it, he can see it, the impact he's having. And then we have this kind of colloquial sense of starting with that conjunction and when. So, the next thing, when the sun finally shows up in the east, like some latecomer to a feast, I have got 2 cups of maize ready for it. Okay. So again, this colloquial style, colloquial means informal. The idea of finally, he's treating the sun as something that he's expecting, a friend, personifying it. This kind of simile here, like a latecomer to a feast. He's got everything ready and the sun kind of rolls up in its own time. He's kind of got this idea of this is a very, relaxed, harmonious atmosphere. And he's spent the time not worrying or fretting that, will the sun come up? There is that reliability. There is that kind of assurance that, yes, it always will. And so he's prepared. And the 2 cobs of maize, obviously he's going to eat them both himself, but it's this idea of sharing and offering to the sun, kind of the idea of sitting down to eat with a friend, sitting down to eat with something that is, valued and respected. Then I tell the sun to come share with me the roasted maize, and the sun just winks like a grown-up. Interesting, this idea of tell the sun, hospitality, relationship, reciprocity, okay, kind of instruction is a friendly one. It's not an order, kind of raw imperative. Come share. It's familiar, it's friendly. And if you look at the line break here, we've got, I tell the sun to come share with me. We know the enjambment's flicking it round to that with me, but we've also got, I tell the sun to come share. So in that line break, in that white space, it just raises the possibility that the sun is going to share with him as well. Sun, come share is the implication of what you've got. I'm going to share the maize, but you come and share what you've got. So the heat and the light and the warmth and all those life-giving properties. And in return, you get the roasted maize. And the sun just winks like a grown-up. So that wink and the grown-up simile, it's got the idea that this 14-year-old boy has got this love and affection and familiarity with the sun, but the sun is privy, the sun is kind of in possession of all sorts of ideas and thoughts and knowledge which the 14-year-old boy doesn't have. These are the secrets of kind of adulthood that he's not yet sharing. He's on the edge of that. He's old enough to realize that grown-ups have their secrets and grown-ups have their knowledge that he doesn't know, that they're kind of holding from him in a good-natured way here. But again, it's a kind of growing up poem. He's on that edge of being able to share in the joke. But at the moment, the sun just winks. We've got a lot of words that like just and some that are kind of just showing you that he's maybe not as confident in his place and in his understanding of everything that as he would have you believe, as the kind of early assertions would go along with. So he gives the kind of maize to the sun. He's ready to enjoy this at sunrise and share. And so he goes ahead. He takes this relationship with the sun as a sort of permission that and enacts that reciprocity. And again, that kind of harmony with his surroundings, with nature, with what he's doing, just taking that moment of just enjoying sitting at sunrise with his good food that he's just cooked over an open fire. Alternate bites, one for the sun, one for me, this one for the sun, this one for me. And the anaphora there, that's anaphora, which is the repetition of a word or words at the start of subsequent sentences or clauses, is again showing that idea of fairness, of equality, of balance, of harmony, right? You can comment on the end stops and lines. It's very kind of controlled and, turns are taken. This is not a picture of a way of life which is taking from nature and not giving back. It's sharing and it's harmonious, right? Because we kind of get that repeated idea, sun, me, and then end of sun there. We've actually got sun rhymed with itself 3 times, me rhymed with itself twice. And it doesn't kind of stick out as a rhyme because it's the repetition of that end word, but it is, again, giving that sense of connection, giving that sense of importance. Sun gets one more mention, but they're together in harmony. And as he's biting, till the cobs are just 2 little skeletons in the sun. And that, if you've seen, the kind of cobs eaten down of maize, yes, it does have something skeletal about it. So that metaphor is really apt. He has eaten everything from the maize and he leaves the kind of husks, he leaves the ends to dry in the sun. But it also ties in, I think, with our image at the start of the poem in that opening quatrain of the intense blue sky, the early potential, the promise of heat, and then the heavy rain. We're looking at those ideas of cycles of life, maybe, that life is cyclical, that generations come and go, that we've got, this idea that you kind of start, you grow up, you die. These are all natural processes. And they're just 2 little skeletons in the sun, that actually the sun has seen all of these skeletons come and go. What is before the sun? Well, the sun is watching everything be born, then live, and then die. So everything is happening before the sun. And Mungoshi is treating us to this moment in this boy's life where he is carrying out this little simple harmonious ritual in his life as a 14-year-old boy on the cusp of adulthood with his life in front of him, but with a sense of inevitability of that cycle of life. We will all be just a little skeleton in the sun at some point. I hope that's helped. I hope you're enjoying the poems and the poetry anthologies you're studying. If you've got any questions or anything, let me know below.